Hey, everybody. He's Drew. He's Chris. Toonses is down there somewhere. This is Vikings Report Live. The rumors of our demise have been greatly exaggerated. Baby, we are back.
Boom!
Drew, Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, Ted. I am happy as heck to be back here with you guys. Finally getting a chance to talk about the draft. I will say that I went 31 out of 31 in my mock for the first round. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, we can get into talking the Vikings talk.
Drew Bunning, how you doing?
That is perfect. I can't follow that up. How are you guys doing tonight? Welcome to all the viewers checking in. Reggie and GMAC and Tollison, all you people are. Doc Proto, he messaged me this morning saying there's a show tonight, and I said, "Oh yeah," but we're back. We're ready to talk football. Free agency's pretty much done, Ted. Draft is in the books. We can discuss some football tonight.
Yes, we will. And folks, real quick, I know we had planned to do a live draft show last Thursday and Friday. Kind of, and for me personally, some things happened that we just couldn't do it. We appreciate your patience. Thank you for liking. Thank you for subscribing. Tonight, like we do for almost every live show, if you make a comment in the section, you're going to be eligible to win one of our prizes. We've got a Jordan Addison shirt, a Jordan Addison mug that was designed by the one, the only, the lovely and talented Toonses. We've also got a Minnesota Vikings hat, and we are also going to give away one of the coveted, like it's a collector's item. It's like a 90s Cabbage Patch Kid kind of collectible thing. This Vikings Report Drew and Ted coffee mug. Put our mug on your mug. That's going to be eligible here for about 10 minutes or so. Look, the reason I want to say thank you is we hit 20,000 subscribers just a couple days ago.
Yeah.
That's an incredible number to me. Thank you so much for all of that. I'm speechless, pretty much humbled, and that's something that rarely happens both at the same time. So there you go.
Okay, so
Let's talk Let's talk the draft, man.
Thanks,
So,
everybody.
I didn't get a chance to follow the draft just because of stuff that was going on for me last week. But the Vikings last Thursday and Friday drafted, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 6 dudes, 7 if you want to count the TJ Hawkinson trade. Chris, what are your overall thoughts on the Vikings draft just in general?
I thought they did a pretty solid job, all things considered. I mean, I think everyone kind of wanted the Vikings to trade down with their early picks, try to accumulate some more draft capital. And they kind of took their countdown clock all the way to the end of their 10-minute allotment, so they must have been trying to do something. But, Kwesi didn't think he got the right deal to let someone else move up. He made a pretty solid pick in the first round. And, I think the Vikings did a pretty solid job overall with their draft last week.
Drew, what do you think?
Oh, what do I think? Ted, I think the Vikings did a great job. I think positionally they did a great job addressing the different positions of need. I think what happened in the first round was, everything is I think, because it's all speculation, because we're all hackers. Nobody knows. Nobody's more in tune than anybody else. But you see that pick 23, I think Kwesi had like 3 or 4 names on there that if they're available, I'm taking them. If not, I'm going to trade back. And I think that's kind of what it came down to. Or since it took so long on the clock, maybe it was he wasn't getting the compensation he wanted for his players. But in my eyes, guys, I really see this as we got 11 picks. That's how I counted it up.
Okay.
We got 6 draft picks. We got Hawkinson as a second-round pick. We got 2 guys that should have been drafted in Ivan Pace Jr.
Yep.
And who else am I thinking of?
Andre Carter.
And Andre Carter. That makes 9. And then in my eyes, Lewis Cine and Andrew Booth are rookies.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You can't really just say.
And a Caleb Evans for that matter.
And a Caleb Evans to a point as well. Yeah.
So that's 12 people. Now, I know a lot of people would argue that doesn't really count because they were last year's guys, but it does count in my eyes. So I think we got double the amount of people, Ted.
Had a question from Marie Munson. She's first long-time listener, first-time caller. Thanks for joining us, Marie. She wants to hear about our thoughts on the quarterback. We're going to get to every pick. We're going to talk about every pick. We're going to talk about the undrafted free agents, and we're also going to roll out a couple prizes. The first one here in just about 10 minutes. So let's do that. Let's go down pick by pick. First round. Now, Drew, leading up to the draft, you and I were both huge trade down guys.
Right.
We wanted the Vikings to trade down, maybe accumulated a couple more picks. That didn't happen. They stayed at 23, and that kind of went against the conventional wisdom of the moment, thinking the last week or so 2 weeks leading up to the draft, that the Vikings were going to trade up to 3, so completely put the entire future of their franchise in jeopardy and draft a dude like Anthony Richardson. But they did not.
Remember all the smoke from that? We're going to trade up to 4. Remember all that?
Yeah.
Jeez, a lot of energy being spent on that stuff.
So they end up staying at 23, and they draft Jordan Addison. What were your thoughts about Jordan Addison, the actual Jordan Addison pick?
Back when we highlighted the wide receivers a couple months ago, he was my number 1 wide receiver pick.
Okay.
And because I kind of saw in him a lot what I saw in Amon-Ra St. Brown, who also went to USC. They look, they're polished receivers coming out of there, Ted. And that's why I had him number 1 on my board. 8 touchdowns, 59 catches, former Biletnikoff winner. The guy is just super polished as a receiver from what I see. Kind of reminds me of Will Fuller at Notre Dame. You see some guys that get into their breaks and they improvise on the fly when they have to get open to help the quarterback, or they're good route runners from the beginning. And you look at Addison, he did it at Pittsburgh and he did it at USC, did it at 2 different schools. So I was happy with the pick. I really was. I think he's going to help. I think he's going to make us unstoppable on offense.
Chris, longtime friend of the show, Doc Proto, asked the question, was just up here on the screen. Would Jordan Addison be there if the Vikings had traded back?
I honestly don't think he would have been, because there were some rumors floating around social media that there were a couple of teams that wanted to trade up. I think New Orleans was one. I think Kansas City was another one. So Addison was picked at the end of a run of 4 consecutive wide receivers being taken. I think Smith and Jigba went, and then Quentin Johnston went, and then Zay Flowers. And so at that point, you're kind of getting, if teams want to jump over you to try to get a wide receiver. So Kwesi probably could have traded back and gotten some more picks, but I honestly don't think that Addison would have been there at 29 or 30 or 31. I think someone would have jumped and snapped him up before the Vikings would have gotten back on the clock again. So no, I don't think he would have been there if we would have traded back.
Yeah, I saw a thing a couple days after the draft, or maybe the day after the first round, that a tweet or a story real quick that I was scrolling when I had a couple spare moments, that the Vikings were looking to trade down, but they felt the teams that they were in trade negotiations with were trading up to get Addison. And if you believe the draft expert opinion, that the level of talent kind of drops off fairly significantly between Jordan Addison, and those 3 other guys, Flowers, Smith and Jigba, and I believe it's Johnson you mentioned, Chris. And then the next tier was fairly substantial to the point the Vikings didn't want to risk it. So in retrospect, I think it's a good pick. And wide receiver, if they had stayed at 23, I'm glad they picked wide receiver as opposed to cornerback. But I'm not upset with the pick at all. So I think most everybody seemed pretty satisfied with what the Vikings did in the first round. The cool thing about Addison is, Ted, you could put him in the slot or put him outside. His whole thing is yards after catch. You throw him on a quick slant. You want to get that guy the ball because he is deadly on yards. You know what it reminds me of? Devontae Smith. That's what it reminds me of. The guy that was on Bama, who's now on the Eagles. Reminds me a lot of him. But I'll never forget Devontae Smith, because he had like 850 yards receiving against Ohio State in that national championship game in the first half.
And the thing about Addison is he's been in a program there at SC where he's more advanced than a lot of these guys. Yeah. And the scheme they ran over there. I mean, he knows slot, outside, routes, breaking off routes, creating separation, which is one thing. He's like Diggs in that matter. He creates good separation, runs good routes. He's a polished wide receiver, and the Vikings are going to, man, they got a good weapon there. They got a good weapon. They can bounce around anywhere.
Chris, is Jordan Addison wide receiver number 2 as it stands today, or do you think it's obviously Justin Jefferson's wide receiver 1, and then
the guy
who's still on the team,
KJ Osborne?
Thank you very much, my God. Or KJ Osborne, wide receiver 2, and then Addison, or how do you see that depth chart filling itself out right now?
They showed the video of Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell making the Addison pick at Vikings headquarters, and the words that came right out of Kevin O'Connell's mouth were, that guy's a day 1 starter. So, yeah, Jordan Addison is wide receiver 2. I mean, KJ Osborne has done some really nice things over the last couple of years. I mean, considering the kind of disaster that he was as a rookie for the Vikings, what he's done over the last couple of seasons has been impressive. But no, Jordan Addison is wide receiver 2 as things stand right now.
All right.
Well said. Well said.
Very, very well said. And that I think it gives the Vikings a fairly lethal offense. You know, Kirk's coming back. You got Addison. You got KJ Osborne. You got Justin Jefferson to throw to on the outside. You've got a full season of TJ Hawkinson. We'll talk about Dwayne McBride and Dalvin Cook and the running backs here in a little bit and how that goes. But this offense looks absolutely downright lethal right now as it stands today.
It certainly does. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what they do at running back here going forward. But, you know, as far as throwing the ball and catching the ball, they're going to be pretty solid.
Yeah,
all right, so
Ted. You imagine Justin Jefferson throughout the course of his season comparing notes with Addison.
Yeah.
Those are like two, I mean, holy crap. They're going to devise a lot of different things. They're both really polished receivers, but he's still got, coming out of college, got a lot to learn. But, man, they're going to be bouncing ideas off people. He's unstoppable.
I can't wait for Dan Chisena to get a hold of of Addison and show him the ropes, you know, the wily vet that he is. Okay, real quick before we move on, Addison, over or under 55 receptions, 1,050 yards, and 5.5 TD touchdowns from our good friend Reggie Adams. I'm going under. I'm going under with all of them right now. This is rookie. There's too many guys to throw the ball to. I'm going under.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree with Ted. I mean, I think he's going to get a lot of catches. He's going to do a lot of good things. But, you know, as of now, TJ Hawkinson is the number 2 option in this pass offense. And he proved last season that that's exactly where he should be. He's going to get his hands on a lot of the red zone touches and that sort of thing. So, yeah, he's going to come close, but I think he's going to be under on all 3 of those.
Drew?
I hate to say under, but just slightly under. It has a chance to go over. How's that for a political answer? It's tough to get numbers for rookies, Ted, especially when you're going up against Hawkinson and Justin Jefferson. So I'm going to say a little bit under, but not much.
All right, so before we move on to the 3rd round pick, Chris, I believe we're going to give away our first prize now, and it's going to be a trivia question that Chris is going to read, and the first person that can answer it in the comment as decided by Ruby is our prize winner.
Can you read it like Dusty Rhodes?
No, because then my wife's going to think I'm having a stroke again, and I don't need that kind of...
Those are hard times, Daddy. Those are hard times, baby.
Especially for people that don't know the answer. But yeah, so... All right, so we just finished talking about the wide receiver position for the Vikings, and we all know that Adam Thielen is no longer with the team. He's moved on to Carolina. So he has the most receiving yardage for an undrafted player in franchise history. The question is, who is second in that category, receiving yards for the Minnesota Vikings by an undrafted player?
The most yards receiving by an
undrafted player.
Undrafted Vikings player behind Adam Thielen.
Yep.
First person right now. They're typing.
The first person to get that right, as decided by Toonses, wins that Vikings report with Drew and Ted mug that Drew just showed.
I like it.
All right.
I like it. Impromptu trivia giveaway. We are on fire.
Yeah.
So the Vikings picked Jordan Addison 23rd overall. They had no second pick because of the TJ Hawkinson trade last year that went to Detroit. And they were originally picking 87th overall in the third round. I'm not sure what point in the round it was, but as the Vikings, I guess it was closing in on the Vikings pick. They traded with San Francisco. They traded that pick. They received a third round pick 102, a fifth round pick, 164, and a seventh round pick, 222. I was really busy that day. I didn't see a whole lot what was going on. Drew, what were your feelings when the Vikings traded down at that point?
I think I expected him to trade down from first round, so I was expecting it. I was waiting for the trade back. I was all ready for it.
Were you happy with the gap between what 2023 and then 102? So that was what 70 some picks.
It was really irritating because when you're watching each pick go by, and as I'm watching them, marking them off the Drew big board.
Yeah,
I wish I had that guy. Wish we would have got that guy. Wish we got that guy. And after 90 of those, you're going. And I actually made the comment on the Gallahorn post thread that it's been a huge gap between pick one and pick where we're at now. It kind of sucks. And yeah. Ryan Johnson, who is the host of Viking Uncensored, friend of ours, Rhino, he messaged me and said, you got to factor Hawkinson in there. And I went, you're right. That's like our second round pick. So that made it a little easier to accept, but sitting there watching it live, I mean, it's like a big gap going by, but he was right. We had, Hawkinson for the second rounder, but.
Chris, were you okay with the trade down, or did you want the Vikings to make a pick there at 87? Excuse me,
I
at
was
87.
fine with the Vikings. I was fine with the Vikings trading down because, once you get into the third round and the fourth round and whatnot, there's really no consensus anymore as to who the best players are. And everybody gets the best guy left on their board. I mean, that's what they tell you at the press conference. Yeah, he was the best guy we had left on our board. Seventh round comes along. Yeah, he was the best guy we had left on the board. So it doesn't matter what we think. It matters what the scouting departments and these guys think. And if they decided there was enough value in trading down to still get who they wanted, I was happy with it because I wanted them to have more swings than they came in with. So they did that with that trade down.
And with that pick at 102, they stayed at 102 and drafted Mekhi Blackman, cornerback out of USC. So they went USC picks 1 and 2 overall in terms of picks, but the first round and third round. I kind of thought the Vikings really weren't needy at cornerback. When Drew, you mentioned at the beginning of the show, both Caleb Evans and Andrew Booth Jr. are going to be coming back. They're expected to be in the mix for starting roles. But somebody on Twitter today said, I think it was Brett Coleman, who's got a really good show on YouTube, said he thought Blackman was the Vikings' best pick overall and is probably going to be CB1 by Halloween. I'm not sure what you guys think about that, but I think he brings a much added depth to the cornerback room that the Vikings probably needed.
Yeah, and I like the story. I think it was Daniel Jeremiah was telling on the NFL Network broadcast after the Blackman pick was made. He said that obviously Blackman and Jordan Addison were teammates with Southern Cal and whatnot. And Jeremiah said that in practice, when they were going through drills and whatnot, Blackman would jump the line in front of the other cornerback so that he could get the reps against Addison, because he wanted to go against Addison as often as possible because he knew that was going to help him to get better. So, that's the kind of competitiveness you want to see from a cornerback. And I guess his specialty is kind of man-to-man coverage. So if that's what Brian Flores is going to try to bring with this new look defense for Minnesota, that seems like a pretty solid pick to me.
Yeah. When you look at what Brian Flores likes to do, man press, put guys up right against the receivers, Blackman does that very well. In the fourth round, pick 134. They were at 119, and then again they traded down to 134, but they got a fifth round pick in next year's draft when they made that trade with Kansas City, and then in round 4 they drafted safety Jay Ward out of LSU. And from what I know about Jay Ward, he plays multiple positions on defense, and I know that is something, that position flexibility is something that Brian Flores really likes, and I kind of am intrigued to the idea about Jay Ward and Lewis Seen for the next 4, 5, 6 years, Drew.
Oh, man. Jay Ward, what a great guy to do research on. That dude, I think he's a safety. Some people argue he's a corner. I guess the Vikings will figure out what he's going to do. But he was on the Drew Big Board as a safety. And one thing, not to go backwards, but Blackman, that guy is going to take somebody's job, and Flores will have an opportunity to keep him off the field.
Okay.
Mekhi Blackman, I just want to throw that in there.
Okay.
I like that he's so versatile. He can play cornerback. He can play safety. Huge motor on this guy, man. His leadership at LSU, if you watch a lot of his tape, he's the one instructing the defense in the secondary. And he's the one that's very confident, and he doesn't mind taking chances. The only problem I ever see with Ward is tackling. Maybe he needs to take some better angles and become a better tackler.
Okay.
But overall, his coverage skills are off the charts in my book. He's a great coverage guy.
Chris, what are your thoughts on Ward? You good pick? Did we reach? Was he at the right spot they got him at? Sleeper? What are you thinking?
I mean, that kind of seemed like the right spot for a guy like Jay Ward from a lot of the scouting reports I read on him. Like Drew said, he's gotten starts at corner, he's gotten starts at safety, he can play inside, he can play outside, and we go back to Brian Flores. He wants versatile players on his defense, and with the kind of experience that Jay Ward had at LSU, he kind of fits that bill. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Vikings kind of deploy him on defense, whether they start him out at safety or make him more of a nickel guy, or what they're planning on doing with him. But he's going to be an interesting one to keep an eye on during camp.
Okay. Ted, the biggest drawback with Jay Ward, for me, is that they got to figure out how to make him tackle without the violent collisions. And I don't mind a guy that wants to tackle somebody violently. I mean, that's kind of old school in my book. But the times he's had injury problems is when he just rifles himself in there in the play, and then he gets hurt from it. He gets hurt of how he tackles. So he needs to teach him how to take better angles and how to tackle without getting himself hurt. He's gotten himself hurt a few times by just being relentless and but you like to see that. But he's got some fundamental stuff to work on. But that guy's going to be a great safety in this league.
So it's fairly assumed at this point, a lot can happen between now and week one, that your starting safeties are going to be Lewis Cine and Harrison Smith. Cam Bynum is probably going to be the top backup, the number 3 guy in the depth chart. Do you see a point where Jay Ward might overtake Cam Bynum, or maybe even Lewis Cine or Harrison Smith, to the point that they've got to play him more than people think they would at the beginning of the year?
I mean, maybe not this season, and this is probably Harrison Smith's last year in Minnesota, to be honest. But, I don't know if he gets to that point this year, barring injuries and whatnot. But, no, I think he's a guy that's going to make his way into the starting lineup eventually. It might just take him a year or two.
Okay. He absolutely is going to take somebody's job, Ted. He's got too much, football IQ, whatever you want to take for that. He's too smart back there. I mean, the guy, he knows almost where every play is going before it happens. And like I said, he likes to hit. He likes to be a leader. I think it's just a matter of time before he's the second safety, probably him and Cine.
Okay. So that takes the top 4 picks. Going into the 5th round then, the Vikings were sitting at pick 158, and they actually moved up in the draft. They moved up in the 5th round to pick 141. So They traded pick 158 and a 6th round pick, 211 overall, for pick 141, and drafted Jacqueline. Is it pronounced Waugh or Roy?
Roy.
It's LSU, so I'm thinking it's Waugh.
He's not a goalie, Ted. It's Roy.
Oh, he's not Patrick Waugh?
No one was Patrick Waugh.
That's true.
What about Patrick Waugh skating across to the other side to fight the goalie? You gotta love some Patrick Waugh.
What was he said about?
He was a real dick, that Patrick Waugh. What an a-hole.
What was the comment he had about Jeremy Roenick back in the day? Tell Jeremy I can't hear him. I got 2 Stanley Cup rings in my ear. One of the greatest digs of all time. Anyways,
he became a head coach, and he went empty net with 16 minutes left in the 3rd.
All right. Jacqueline Robb, defensive tackle out of LSU. There were people that were saying this might have been one of the bigger sleeper picks of the draft for any team, not much less the Vikings. Chris, what do you know about this kid, and what do you like about him?
So I know how much we all love mock drafts, but there was one mock that I think our friend Tyler Fornes pointed out on the Vikings wire that came out in June of last year.
Okay.
That not only had Jordan Addison going to the Vikings like 9 months ahead of time, but one of the other first round picks in that draft was Jacqueline Roy, who went at like number 18 or number 19 overall. So at some point in time, someone somewhere thought this dude had first round talent, and he wound up falling all the way to the 5th round. So I think one of the pre-draft magazines that came out that I got my hands on, they actually made they actually do the pro comparisons to the players that are currently in the league or whatever. And I believe, if I remember right, Roy's comparison was actually Harrison Phillips as the guy that can stop the run, guy who can generate just enough pass rush to not have to be taken off the field all the time. I mean, he's a big dude. He's got it sounds like his thing at LSU is that he just couldn't put it all together at one time. He's got all the physical skills and the size and whatnot, but yeah, he has an opportunity. I mean, we know how weak the Vikings were up front last year, and now Dalvin Tomlinson's gone, and there's going to be opportunities for guys like him.
Comment from going back to the Blackman pick real quick before I get your thoughts, Drew, on Roy. Stuart Anderson said, "Geez, so many of the Vikings YouTubers lost their ever-loving freaking mind over the Blackman pick. So glad you guys are so chill about it." So, look, my opinion is whether we think the Vikings took a guy early or they got to steal it, it doesn't really matter. I mean, we're not in the draft. We didn't have a say, so they're Vikings now. So you give them the benefit of the doubt and give them a shot.
And maybe if Toots has time, find out if that's a Stuart Anderson that owns the Black Angus, because I'd like some coupons.
Stu, give Drew some coupons.
Coupons.
But back to Jacqueline Roy. Drew, where do you think this guy fits in? Did you like the pick? Do you think it was a steal or not?
First off, instead of struggling with his name, can we just call him Jaquelin, like the substitute teacher from Key and Peele? Why didn't you just answer me the first time I asked you, Jaquelin?
Okay, Aaron.
Yeah. I'm just going to call him Old Roy. This guy has a bunch of bad habits, and if they get fixed, he's going to be a superstar on the inside. He's so quick, and most of these guys that come in, he's kind of set up as a 3 technique. Most of these guys that get drafted have like one move. If you watch his tape, he's got like 6 or 7 moves. The spin, the over under, he's got all that. He works very hard at what he does. And I like this guy. I like the pick when it happened, and I'm even more excited, even doing more research on him since the Vikings selected him. He's got a chance to develop into a great defensive tackle, but he does have some bad habits with his feet and all that, but they all do. All these guys coming into the league have to work on it. He is a lot of upside. That's Questy's idea for this draft. Guys that could have superstar potential. And he's
one of the things I saw about Roy is that consistency was a big issue for him. And you'll generally find that theme in later picks. Guys with a lot of natural talent, but just can't seem to put it together on every snap. And look, I'm a big fan of Brian Flores. I'm a big fan of what I think he can do with this Vikings defense. And he has a lot of raw talent. And I think Roy just might be the epitome of that. And if he can develop that talent, Vikings got a chance to have a pretty good defense, I think.
Well, Ted, if you look at a 3-4, we don't have the most dominating defensive ends. If you look at the 3 down linemen.
No.
And the thing about Roy is, if people question it, they want guys in the middle of the interior defensive line that could get to the quarterback. Roy is more of a pocket pusher, not a pocket sacker.
Okay.
Does that make any sense? I know that's using kind of weird words there, but that's kind of what he is. But man, if this guy gets coached up right, he's going to be a nightmare.
All right, friendly reminder, folks. We're gonna be making a couple drawings coming up here in just a minute. We're gonna roll, and then a couple at the end of the show. To be eligible for a prize, just make a comment in the live comment thread we got going on, and you'll be eligible. The one comment equals 1 entry. 20 comments equals 1 entry. But comment all you want. We're gonna be here for a while.
Good point by Bob M. Bob M. just made a good point about the undrafted free agents.
Yeah.
Makes the draft better.
Earlier in the show, long-time listener, first-time commenter Marie mentioned she wanted to hear our thoughts on the 5th-round pick, 164 overall, BYU quarterback Jaron Hall. Drew, tell Marie what you think of the young Mr. Hall.
I like Jaron Hall, and I think right out the bat, people are saying, "Oh, he'll never make it because he was a 5th-round pick." You know, all that doesn't matter. Staubach was a 10th-round pick. There's a bunch of guys that went late that ended up doing good. Zone read guy, I think he's a great. Look at his numbers, Ted. 31-71, 34 touchdowns, only 6 interceptions, 34-6 in ratio. He runs the ball 350 yards, 3 more touchdowns. He is a developmental guy, and I think guys like who's the guy that the Jets took? That just
last year, Zach Wilson.
Yeah, the Cougar Hunter, whatever.
That's it.
He kind of ruins it for a lot of BYU quarterbacks. And when people you can't just look at the draft round. There's plenty of guys that could come in late and develop into really, really good players. I think he's one of them. Only played in 29 games, first in 5 seasons, which is kind of weird. Had a hip injury, concussion problem, whatever. I think he's going to go as far as the work he puts in. I love the fact that he can make plays out of the pocket. He looks downfield all the time, and he seems kind of fearless and confident in there.
Okay.
I don't know what it's going to turn into, but he's in the right position. I think if he wasn't going to the Vikings with O'Connell being a quarterback himself, his development would be shot by another team. I think Jaron Hall's got drafted by the perfect team for him. Now we'll have to see if it's a perfect team for us. Or perfect matchup.
I have said this all off season that when we talk about Kirk Cousins every off year, is he going to be back? Are they going to trade him? Whatever. That I am a lot more confident in Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah and Kevin O'Connell scouting, drafting, and developing a quarterback than I ever was with Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman.
Absolutely.
Now that said, Chris, Kirk Cousins is on the last year of his deal. He had a press conference either yesterday, I think it was, maybe today. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he said, "Look, I want to retire a Viking, but I know I have to earn it. There's no guarantee that they are going to extend him." Is Jaron Hall the potential successor to Kirk Cousins, Chris?
I think he definitely has the potential to be that quarterback. I mean, I don't know if he's gonna get there in a year. I don't know how much development time he's going to need, but if this is Kirk Cousins' last year, and if the Vikings are expecting him to step in potentially in 2024, I don't know if he's going to be ready by then. There's a chance that he could be, but he's not going to get the reps that he would require to get up to speed by 2024. So if he's the quarterback of the future, they're probably going to have some sort of a bridge in 2024 if Kirk Cousins isn't here anymore. But he definitely has the potential to be the quarterback going forward. But Drew mentioned the thing about being a late round draft pick and how people kind of want to write him off right away. The other thing that kills me about Jaron Hall and Hendon Hooker to a lesser extent is the fact that these guys get drafted and all the really smart football people are like, well, they're so old. They're so old. They don't want. They're not like the dude's 25 years old. Okay, he's not. They didn't draft a 40-year-old guy to be the quarterback of the future. He's 25. I mean, granted, he's a little older than your average rookie because he went to BYU and did the 2-year missionary trip and whatever, and he still played 4 years of college football. I mean, he's 25. What do you do? I mean, if he's going to develop, he's going to develop. He's going to be fine either way. But if he doesn't make it, it's not going to be because he stayed in college longer to do missionary work or whatever and didn't get drafted until he was 25. It's going to be, just he couldn't hack it physically or couldn't for whatever reason. But it's not going to be because he's 25.
Here's why I'm okay with the Hall pick. We alluded to this at the very beginning of the show that in the last 2-3 weeks leading up to the draft, there was like this fever dream that half of the Vikings fan base wanted was mortgaging the entire future of your franchise in the near term to trade up and get a guy like Anthony Richardson, or maybe if Bryce Young and CJ Stroud weren't taken 1 and 2, which they were, that they might be have a chance to get one of those guys. Drew, you and Chris, I don't think you were in a big fan of that either. When it didn't happen, and I thought, well, okay, maybe they're going to extend Kirk or whatever, and they ended up drafting Hall in the 5th round. I'm okay with it, because if Hall doesn't pan out, then they didn't really lose anything other than a day 3 pick, which
exactly right.
Okay,
exactly
that's fine.
Right.
Whereas if a guy like Anthony Richardson doesn't pan out,
right.
Now you're talking about you've lost 1st-round draft picks and for the next 2 or 3 seasons, and for the Vikings it would have probably been 3 just because of the lack of draft picks they had this year. And now you don't have those picks to recoup and maybe build around other positions, or maybe go get another quarterback if that guy pans out or if that guy flames out. So if Hall doesn't pan out, they've got a couple years to decide. And if he doesn't, well, and sends him on his way, and he goes to be a missionary in like Saskatchewan or whatever, then whatever, that's fine. Okay. Thanks for giving it your best shot. And the Vikings are none the worse in terms of future draft picks. So I hope he does. I kind of hope he does pan out, just because people were kind of bagging on the pick for some reason. Just, I don't make his 5th round pick, maybe because he went to BYU. I don't know.
Preaching the gospel to the disconnected natives of Saskatchewan.
I don't get it. You look at the guy that was on the Eagles that came from North Dakota, the guy Wentz.
Carson Wentz.
You look at Lance, Trey Lance. I mean, they get all his accolades. This guy's better than both those guys. I don't get listen, here's what it comes down to. Everything Ted just said is the biggest positive of the thing. You didn't mortgage the future. You have a chance. What if Hall ends up being better than Richardson? You're looking like a genius. You got to love his creativeness, elusiveness, making plays out of the pocket. He's not going to play next year, but this is a good thing about the Viking situation and for Jaren Hall. He doesn't need to play next year.
No. If
he's looking at 2025 as his starting NFL career pretty much for being a starter, then that means he has two full losing my train of thought. Two full off seasons in front of him. So that's huge, Ted. The 2 full training camps.
And not only that, we talked about Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah scouting and developing. I think you would be hard-pressed to find a better quarterback to learn from in the NFL in terms of film study and preparation than Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins is famous for film study, film breakdown, preparation, collaboration now with the coaching staff. I think you talked about him being in a good environment. I couldn't agree more. And if Hall develops, it will be because of the groundwork that has been laid in terms of Kirk Cousins mentoring him, Kevin O'Connell developing him, and scouting and getting the right guy in the first place. But long way to go. We'll see what happens.
And similar to what you said before, Ted. I mean, you said you have more faith in Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah. When people like you call it a fever dream, trading up for a guy like Anthony Richardson, whatever. Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell know that if they trade up for a guy like Richardson and he doesn't pan out, they're not going to be around to develop the next guy. That's going to go to the next head coach and the next general manager, because that's the kind of thing that gets you fired.
It does
if it doesn't work out properly.
That is a great point, and I will saddle back on top of that, or piggyback, whatever you want to call it, by saying the luxury that Hall has is he doesn't have to start next year. He's a typical. You start him next year, he's ruined. Like Manziel, all the rest of those guys you've seen rushed in there.
Yeah,
Richardson, I'm telling you, there's not more pressure on anybody in this draft but him, and he's going to play next year, and he's going to get ruined. Let me tell you, he's going to get ruined.
There's a good chance, yeah.
So he's a guy that should be sitting also waiting for the following season. I'm telling you, it's going to be the difference. He's going to get thrown to the wolves. He's going to get. You've seen it happen a bunch of times, man, with these college quarterbacks, Chris, that are just like on top of the world, and they're on ESPN every hour, and they get to the pros and they get thrown in too soon, and they just get chewed up, man.
Yep.
What are some of the people in the chat saying about Jaren Hall? Is it good?
Let's see. Bob M just said, watch it here. Let me put it up on the board. Watch the tape of BYU. Let's see. Wow, where is it? Watch tape of BYU last year near the end of the game on 4th and 8. He threw a 40-yard dime and almost wins the game. 4th and 8. GMAC, what are the odds that Jordan Love is at least a really good quarterback? That's John Plutarski's grade point average 0.0. I think Stuart Anderson. I'm psyched about Jaron Hall. I think he has way more upside than most think. I'll agree with that.
Give me my coupons.
Yeah. Doc Proto says I want to take a swing at quarterback until we hit, and the higher the pick, the better. But this year was the smartest move there. I'm not against grabbing a quarterback every year till you find a guy because it's so hard to do this year. So yeah, I think it's generally pretty positive. Put the Michigan hat down.
What about JJ McCarthy next year, Ted?
Put the Michigan hat down.
JJ.
The last pick is 7th rounder, 222nd pick overall, UAB running back Dwayne McBride. And a lot of guys were pretty fired up about this pick for where they got him, where the Vikings got him in the draft. Drew, what are your thoughts on Dwayne McBride, the UAB running back?
I had him 15 on my board, 14 or 15. 1,713 rushing yards and 19 touchdowns. I mean, you got to love the production of that guy. Power, instincts to find the gap, rush through the gap. He's a tough player. I think that guy's going to surprise some people. I'm kind of shocked he went where he did. But how much he can handle being, staying on the field or how much is asked of him. There's no question he's a better than average running back coming in, Ted. He's good.
Chris, I assume you think Mr. McBride is pretty good as well.
I think so. A stat that I love that I was looking up before we got on the air here. Drew mentioned McBride's rushing numbers. He was second in the nation in rushing last year. He finished second in the nation in rushing by 15 yards. The guy who finished ahead of him had more carries than McBride did to get those 15 more yards. It was a kid from the Air Force Academy.
Chris is on fire.
Yeah, that guy, McBride averaged 7.5 yards a carry last year. I don't care what conference you're playing in. I don't care who your competition is. Insane production right there. And the one thing I think that people might want to ding him for is that I don't think he caught a lot of passes in college, but this might not have been something he was asked to do a whole lot of. Doesn't mean he can't do it. He just wasn't asked to do it for UAB. So yeah, I think it's a pretty interesting pick. I mean, it's a 7th round pick, and this is where in today's NFL, the running back position is not a premium position anymore, unfortunately. So if you can get a guy in a 7th round like McBride that can be part of a rotation or be productive or be your number one guy, that's just bonus right there.
There's two reasons he fell to the 7th round. It's the obvious two reasons that all the GMs look at. Top end speed. If you don't have top end speed like Madison's a great running back, but he's not going to get an 85-yard touchdown. If he doesn't have the top end speed, and Chris just mentioned it with his receiving, if you don't catch the ball in this modern day of football out of the backfield, that's a strike against you. Whether that's fair or not, I don't know, but it's top end speed and receiving skills he has to work on. That's the only reason he went to if he was better at those things, he'd have been a 2nd round, 3rd round guy.
One thing that people thought, one of the reasons he dropped, and Bob M brought it up in one of the comments, McBride fumbles too much. I think he had 10 fumbles over the course of the last 2 years or season. Stuart Anderson thinks fumble-itis can be cured with good coaching. Here's my thing. Leading up to the draft, almost ever since the start of free agency began or the offseason began, a lot of speculation about Dalvin Cook. Would he come back? He's got a big cap number, like 12 or 13 million bucks.
What the hell is going on with him, Ted? What are we doing with him?
Yeah, Kwesi Dolphins is one of those big analytics guys that don't believe in paying running backs a lot of money. What's going to happen with Cook? Do you think he's going to be on the team, or is they still going to trade him for a, like a 4th or 5th round pick or 6th round pick in the next coming weeks before training camp? Drew?
I'll divert to Ted or Chris on this because I have no idea at this point. Are they waiting for some June 1st thing, or what are they waiting for? I don't know.
I mean, if they are waiting for the June 1st thing, I can't remember who I saw mentioned on social media, but the big trade target for Dalvin Cook has been Miami. all this time because they need a running back, and that's where Dalvin Cook's from or whatever. Apparently, Miami has a June 1st cut of some sort that they're waiting to have come off of the books. So I don't know if maybe that's the holdup or what it is, but with the way the Vikings have handled the running back position this season, they gave Madison that deal. They were apparently in on David Montgomery before he signed with Detroit. They take McBride in the 7th round. They still got Ty Chandler, and if you want to count Kenny Nwangwu as a potential running back rotation guy, I mean, I don't see any way that next year, I mean, if they're going to trade him or they cut him or whatever, but he's set to count like $14 million or something like that, and like we said, in today's NFL, that's just too rich.
Yeah, I think he's going to be traded. I think he's gone, and I think it's going to be Chandler and McBride kind of. Madison. I think Madison, Chandler, and then McBride getting in there as well.
That is some great knowledge by Chris Gates, man. I tell you, I talked to football with Chris Gates for hours and hours and hours, and I could learn so much. So it looks like a committee. If Cook leaves, it's a committee thing?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
So that'll do it for the Minnesota Vikings draft class. Our thoughts on that. Before we spin the wheel, I want to give a shout out to the Vikings report with Drew and Ted, draft guru prognosticator Drew Bunning. So every year, if you're not a regular fan of this show, A, what's wrong with you? B, every offseason, Drew we do what we call our positional analysis. We take one position per episode, and we talk about potential free agents, guys on the roster, and potential draft picks. And Drew comes up with a top 15 at each position group. And then he kind of makes a prediction on what round he thinks they'll be picked in. This year, I want to go down just the list of how well Drew did. So in the first round, the Vikings picked Jordan Addison. He was wide receiver 1 on Drew's board, taken in the first round. Third round pick, cornerback Mekhi Blackman. He had him cornerback 15 in the 3rd or 4th round. Blackman was taken with the comp pick at the end of the 3rd round. So technically, it was like at the very end of the 3rd round, beginning of the 4th round. Absolutely nailed that pick. 4th round pick, Jay Ward, he had his safety number 14 on his board, had him as a 4th or 5th round pick. Defensive tackle, Jacqueline Roy, he had number 9 overall as a 4th or 5th round pick. Jaron Hall, he had a 3rd or 4th round pick. And he was quarterback 7 overall on his board. So according to Drew Bunning, Jaron Hall was a steal. And he had 7th round pick, Dwayne McBride. He had his running back 13 as a 4th or 5th round guy. Buddy, you nailed this draft. Well done.
Thank you, Ted Glover. I appreciate the kind words. And it's just fun to do. If you don't love college football, you're not going to look at recruits. And part of it is my love for college football. I mean, I watch a lot of college football, and I like to see how these guys transition. But I feel really good about these Viking selections, Ted. And it to me, I think the season ended. I don't know if you guys agree with me. I think the season ended. KOC and Mensa had a meeting, and they said, what is the problem with this team? Number one. And they both agreed, cornerback.
Yeah.
When you look at free agency and look at the draft and they signed another one today from Atlanta, some John Reed. They signed another cornerback today. I think they feel that their cornerback group, I think they both went into the offseason thinking Peterson and Dantzler are gone. We don't want them here. Mm-hmm. I think they went in with that already figured out. And so we got to hit the cornerback group hard, Ted. They hit it hard and often. That's what she said. And I don't know. What do you guys think about that? I think they feel cornerback was the problem in this team.
Yeah, I probably. I mean, in retrospect, looking at everything, I'd agree. I don't know about you, Chris, but yeah, I think so.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, that was, out of all the positions the Vikings struggled at last year, that was probably the biggest. So they went in with a plan, and it seems like they've executed it for the most part.
All right, we're going to talk about the undrafted free agents in a minute. But first, we are going to roll for our second prize of the evening. If you are registered, or if you've made a comment, you're registered. Ruby, whenever you are ready, let's go ahead and pull the wheel up and spin and see who our winner is.
Hi, Tootses.
Or what? You know what? While Ruby's getting ready, what we'll do, I had a couple questions I wanted to ask you guys.
Yeah.
Oh,
What?
oh, Ruby, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Rolling,
Yes.
rolling.
Okay.
Keep
Yes,
those
we can.
beauties rolling. Rawhide. Yeah, we can hear you. My little meow
All
meow.
right, here we go.
All righty.
Look at that,
This
guys.
is kind of a new one.
Chris loves the Wheel
Not
of Destiny, don't you, Chris?
Absolutely.
Not a lot of names, so here we go.
What?
Hit the spin. Let's go.
I like spinners. Who got it?
Our boy Nick Howard. Congratulations.
The new proud papa, Nick Howard.
Nick Howard, friend of the show, Nick. Well done. All right.
Not to be confused with Mo.
No. Or Nick Nolte. So in wrapping up our talk about the draft class before we get the undrafted free agents, Chris, who was your favorite pick of all those guys the Vikings got?
I mean, I'm gonna go with the easy one and say Addison. I mean,
Okay.
I just think he slots in right away. He fills something that the Vikings need with no more Adam Thielen, and I think he's going to be a really productive player in this offense straight away. So it's the obvious answer, but I think it's the right answer in this case.
Drew?
I think it's Mekhi Blackman.
Okay.
I think he will be by the time week 4 or so hits, I mean, he's going to be the guy that everybody loves. He's a really great player.
All righty. I'm going to go with Jaron Hall, and not because I think he's going to be the starting quarterback or he's going to beat out Kirk, but just for the philosophy the Vikings are using in looking ahead to life after Kirk. I think he has potential to be really good. I think he has potential to at least be a really good backup this year if he's forced into coming into play. And I'm just very, very encouraged that the Vikings are at least, while not kicking Kirk to the curb, are
Right.
at least thinking about what they're going to do once Kirk is gone, whether it's the end of 2023 or whenever. So that's my reasoning for Jaron Hall.
So how do you guys grade out just the draft picks for the Vikings?
A++.
Okay.
Yeah.
17-0. Next, going to win the next 4 or 5 Super Bowls, hands down. No question in my mind.
Yep. Not a loss on the schedule this year.
Not one.
Oh, I love you guys. Man.
No, I think they did a good job. Wide receiver, we kind of thought going into the draft was something they needed to fill, and they did. They got a corner. They got another safety to potentially pair with Lewis Seen after Harrison Smith leaves. They got defensive line help. I'm not irritated with their class at all. I thought the picks they got were good picks where they got them, good value picks. I think they even got a couple of steals potentially in Roy and Hall, depending on how he develops. So I don't see how you can be irritated out of with this draft class unless unless you're a member of Everything Sucks All the Time Nation, ESAT Nation, as we like to call them around here.
To hell with this team. Yeah, I'm happy with it too, and I'm going to go on record as saying right now, Addison is going to have a better career than both Njigba and Quentin Johnston.
Oh, but not Zay Flowers.
No, he'll be better than Zay Flowers. He'll be the best receiver in this draft. He'll be the best receiver production wise.
Okay.
Because of the system he's in, because he's with Jefferson, because he's with KOC and Wes Phillips.
Yeah.
He is going to bloom, Ted. You know that kind of bloom thing or boom, whatever we call it.
Yeah.
But everybody better get ready. Vikings are coming offensively.
Chris, what are you going to give them? I know you love draft grades as much as I love mock drafts.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, let's project this before anyone's even taken a snap. I think based on filling the needs they needed to fill and doing what they needed to do, I think you gotta give them at least a B. I mean, probably maybe a B plus, but with 6 picks, there's only so much you can do. So yeah, no, I think they did a pretty solid job for all the reasons we've already gone over.
Purple Haze with a great comment. It says, being patient and waiting for our pick to come up was the best thing. And
Great comment.
That's one thing I really meant to talk about earlier, but there was absolutely no panic with the Vikings draft picks this year. They didn't flip out. They didn't, go move up to 3 and trade 30 picks for Anthony Richardson. They stayed where they were, or they knew what guys they wanted and were willing to either wait for them or even trade down and still get them. And and when they did make a trade up, it was for Jacqueline Roy in the 5th round, and they moved up 14 spots, and they gave up a 6th round pick for that. So no big deal. I thought all the trades were good and sound, and unlike last year when we didn't like that first trade with Detroit, but
right.
I thought Kwesi had a very good weekend.
Great comment by Purple Haze. Purple Haze, right now you're all up in my brain. Lately things, they seem the same. That's a really good point, because panicking is what gets teams into trouble. We talked about that in the last video show.
We did.
They're sticking to their plan, and they're going to do it their way. If they fail, at least they did it their way.
All right. Real quick, the Vikings, right after the draft, signed like 15 undrafted free agents. Jackie Chan, offensive lineman out of Pace, movie star.
Yeah,
was one of them. No,
he does all his own stunts.
Best Jackie Chan movie, Ted.
I can't even think of Jackie Chan movie. He did some stuff with Chris Tucker earlier, like a long time ago. I thought was really funny.
The Rush Hour movies.
There you go, the Rush Hour.
There we go. Yeah, Jackie Chan will definitely help the defense.
But of all the 15 undrafted free agents, very few which will make a roster. Some might make a practice squad. However, this year there are two notable exceptions. One is outside linebacker Andre Carter, the second from Army, and then inside linebacker Ivan Pace Jr. from Cincinnati. PFF said the 2 best undrafted free agents were Pace and Carter, and the Vikings got them both. They were really singing the praises of the Vikings undrafted free agency class. And I'm a big fan of both Carter and Pace. And I'm wondering why neither of those guys were drafted, because in leading up to the draft, those guys were either 3rd or 4th round picks projected. And the Vikings got both of them. What happened?
I mean, this is the kind of thing you see with some guys every year, though. I mean, there's guys that get hyped up as, 2nd, 3rd, 4th rounders, and then for whatever reason, like we said before, we don't know how different teams rack and stack their boards or whatever. A guy that's a 3rd round pick on one team's board could be a 5th or 6th rounder for another team, and then the next thing you know, all the draft picks have been made, and this dude's still sitting out there waiting to hear his name called. So that's kind of what happened with Pace and Carter. I mean, I know Carter had a much better junior year at Army than he had a senior year, but Pace was solid for his entire career at Cincinnati. So I'm not entirely sure, but I'm happy they're both in Minnesota, to be honest.
G-Mac says, I think it was discovered that both men like pineapple on pizza. That would automatically be a 1 grade or 1 round knockdown from me. Although my grandsons like pineapple on pizza, so I can't knock it too bad.
There's only one G-Mac, right? I mean, that guy's awesome.
Ivan Pace, Drew, seems like a guy the Vikings like in terms of size for linebackers. You look at Brian Asamoah, undersized dude, flashed a little bit when he did get a chance to play last year. Ivan Pace reminds me a lot of Brian Asamoah. What caused Carter and Pace to not be drafted, and do you think these guys have a shot at making the 53-man roster?
Oh, Pace is going to be on the team. There's no question in my mind. He should have been drafted. People don't like the size. That doesn't matter, dude.
That's what she said.
You know what outranks the size, Ted, is the instincts.
The motion in the ocean, I've always been told.
Look at the guys. He started out different school, transferred over. He was at Miami of Ohio or something, if I remember right. If you look at the numbers that guy had in 2 seasons, I got the numbers right here, Ted. I know you're going to look them up, but played in all 26 games the last 2 seasons. Says a lot about his durability. Didn't miss 1 game. 261 tackles, 2 seasons.
Wow.
Let that sink in for a second, folks. 261 tackles, 115 solo, but he was in on 261 tackles. I don't care how tall the guy is. He could be Billy Barty. I don't give a shit.
Billy Barty.
if you're making tackle, Freddie Patek. Remember Freddie Patek?
Shortstop for the Royals back in the day.
That's right, little Freddie Patek. He's like
5 feet 4 inches of American League All-Star is what he was.
He was Freddie Patek. Yeah. So get this though: 33 and a half tackles for loss in 2 years, 13 sacks, 1 interception, 3 forced fumbles, and 7 passes defense. Like I said, I don't care about the size. This guy has the instincts to play linebacker. He's a tough player. He has a big motor, and people don't want to draft him because of his size. You know what it is besides his size? If you look at a lot of his tape, not all the good tape, the bad tape, he has trouble getting off blocks. And if you can't learn how to get off a guard's block or something, he gets stuck to him too much. And that is going to be a problem unless he could figure out how to get off blocks. But in terms of football, that guy is a football player, Ted. And
Chris,
he's going to make the team, and he's going to shred.
Chris, do you think Pace or Carter are going to make the team?
I think Pace is. I think Carter might need a year on the practice squad. I think the Vikings would be more than willing to give him that. I think Carter needs to put on some weight for as tall a guy as he is. But yeah, I agree with Drew. I think Pace is going to make the team. You can kind of visualize Pace and Asamoah just chasing dudes down sideline to sideline. I mean, if the front line can keep the blockers off of those two guys, they're going to make a lot of plays, I think. But yeah, I think Pace definitely makes the final roster. Carter is kind of iffy depending on injuries and things of that nature. But I mean, he's got a shot at it, sure. But I'm not as sold on him as I am on Pace at this time, I don't think.
I think the inside linebacking duo of Ivan Pace and Brian Asamoah has me way too excited for this time of the season. I am really looking forward to seeing those guys on the field at the same time and making a lot of plays. I think it can happen. I don't know that it will, but those guys together with Brian Flores orchestrating this defense has me really hyped up for what's to come.
I agree with everything Chris said about Andre Carter. He's got a lot of work to do developmentally, but he could be Javon Curse that the Titans drafted in 1999. He is the freak. He has a freak. Everything goes with huge wingspan, all that stuff. He can be a great player, but he's got to have some developmental stuff. He's got to learn how to play against the run for starters. But I want to say about Ivan Pace, besides setting all the defensive records for the University of Cincinnati, did you watch I know not many of us missed the Wasabi Fenway Bowl.
I set my DVR to record it. I don't miss the Wasabi. There's a lot of things in my life I do, but one thing I don't do is miss the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. Is that what you called it? Yeah, the Wasabi Fenway Bowl. Yeah, I don't miss that.
The Mayo Bowl, Ted. Remember, we're big on the Mayo Bowl.
Yeah.
He had 17 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, a forced fumble, and a sack in that bowl game. Ivan Pace is Ivan the Terrible. Bring him in and let's crush people.
Alrighty. With that, we are approaching actually a little bit longer than an hour. We've got 2 more prizes to give away. Ruby, are we ready this time? There we are.
Can you hear me this time?
Yeah, got you loud and clear.
Let's go over what we're giving away first, because it's very special.
Oh yeah, so we gave away the mug, the first prize we've got, or the Vikings Report Drew and Ted mug. We've got the Jordan Addison shirt, the Jordan Addison mug that was both designed by Toonces, and then we've got a Minnesota Vikings hat. So prize winners, the drill is once your name's selected, get a hold of Ruby at Vikings Report with Drew and Ted at gmail.com. She'll send you a link to our prize vault, which you can find on our VikingsReport.com website, and you will be able to choose one of the myriad of prizes that we have there. I think I covered it.
Myriad, that's a good word.
Yeah.
All right.
Jordan, The Jordan
rolls
Addison
off
stuff is
rolls
awesome.
off the tongue almost as much as Wasabi Fenway Bowl does.
What about the Wasabi Fenway Bowl, Ted?
What about it?
What
All-time
about
classic.
Ivan Pace was kicking everybody's ass in that game, and now he's a Viking.
All right, Ruby, whenever you're ready, we got 2 prizes to give away, so spin the wheel twice. Doc Proto.
Yeah! Doc Proto.
Doc Proto.
He's been a VR follower since we started. He's very supportive of the show.
Day one.
Good
All
job,
right,
Proto.
we got one more spin to go.
Congrats.
Can you hear
Jeff.
it?
Yeah.
Spinning?
Steve, young ginger.
Younginger. I think
Yeah.
he won something a couple of years ago. I
That's
think he
Denver, isn't it?
Is that
Isn't that Denver
Denver?
Sox fan?
Oh, I don't
Well, I
know.
think it is Denver.
All right, congratulations.
All right,
All right,
Denver
so-
Sox fan.
Those are our prize winners. Go ahead and get a hold of Ruby at Vikings Report with Drew and Ted at gmail.com. She'll send you the link. You'll get to choose one of those prizes. And it's first come, first serve. So if you got your heart set on like the Jordan Addison mug, for example, if you're not the first one to get a hold of Ruby and somebody else picks it, then you'll have to choose from one of the other prizes. But they're all great prizes. I hope you guys enjoy them. So that should about do it for this episode. Guys, I can't tell you how much fun I've had, how glad I am to be back. The last couple of weeks have been pretty brutal. I just wanted to do anything but what I was doing, other than getting to see family, which was always wonderful. But it's great to be back and getting back to a normal life, and you guys helped me accomplish that mission. So my thanks to you. Drew, final thoughts before we get out of here.
The first thing I want to say is getting to 20,000. I mean, I can't tell people how thankful. I mean, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Very awesome. Very awesome. I think in terms of the Vikings, I love the comments tonight, by the way. In terms of the Vikings, it finally feels, and I messaged you a couple days ago, that it feels like a rebirth for me. It feels like they took this draft. We had to work it like we worked it, but we had to get by all the Spielman stuff and all the Spielman mistakes and his contract mistakes and all that. It feels like we've moved into the new regime. It really feels like we finally got there. And I'm excited to see what happens in even training camp and everything ending the season. The Vikings are going to be right in the mix for the NFC Championship.
I think so too. I still think they're the team to beat in the NFC North. Looking at what the Lions and the Bears and the Packers did. Sorry. I mean, everybody says Detroit's going to be the odds-on favorite. Okay, make them the favorite. I still think the Vikings are the team to beat.
We got the best quarterback in the division. So
yeah.
Yep.
Drew or Chris, what are your final wrap up the show thoughts tonight?
I mean, first I want to say congratulations to you guys on getting to 20,000. That's an impressive freaking number for YouTube and for Vikings kind of media in general. So congratulations to you guys on that. And yeah, I'm happy that we got an opportunity to do this with everything that's gone on over the past couple of weeks. And it's just been great getting back to normal and whatnot. And I think the Vikings did as good a job in the draft this year as we could hope for. And like you said, they hit the undrafted free agent class pretty hard. And yeah, this is going to be a solid team going forward again this year. I don't know if they're going to win 13 games again, but I do think they're going to be the division champs again this year and wind up going to the playoffs again. And from there we'll see what happens. But it's going to be interesting to watch this year going forward.
All right. I just think it was a pretty decent offseason for the Vikings. Not a lot of big time free agent signings, but I thought Kwesi did very well in the draft. I like how he's replenishing the depth. And Drew, you said they kind of have shucked out the jive, as Chris Gates said so many times on the Daily Norseman, and now they can bring in the love, not Jordan Love. But I think this makeover is in becoming Kwesi and KOC's team is just about complete, and I think we're going to see a few more surprises before the Vikings hit training camp in July. Folks, for Drew, for Chris, for Ruby, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the 20,000 subscriptions. Thank you for the comments. the feedback, the well wishes for me the last couple weeks. The hey, hope everything's okay. When you guys going to put a show back on? We can't wait to see you on the air again. Can't tell you how much it meant to me or Drew or Chris, and we're just glad to be back. And we're going to be back to our regular schedule soon. Not sure if we're going to have a show next week or not. If not, we are going to be back next Sunday or the following Sunday for the rest of our off-season program. We don't forget we've got draft pick analysis coming up. We're going to take each pick and break them down at their own little segment, just like we did for the positions before the draft. So we will so look for that, and we will see you guys on the flip side. Skol Vikings, everybody.
Yeah, baby, yeah.